Night, so we do have the fireplace going, but it is probably going to get a little warm, so we'll do our best to moderate the temperature here. The city has provided some beverages and cookies there, so please help yourself. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the format for this evening as we kick off our lecture series. And so tonight, I'd like to think of this as a big brainstorming session, and the purpose is to gather all of your thoughts, questions, ideas, information about this that we can later compile and provide to the City Council as they discuss issues and questions and coming before them about this Stibnite Line project. And that's really the purpose of these 3 meetings, is to get as much information out there as we can, and to help give information to the City Council for their decision-making later on in the process. I do want to clarify that the City of McCall does not have any kind of role in approving the mine project or any of the components of the mine project. There are representatives here tonight, I believe, from some of the agencies that do have a role in some of the permitting aspects of the project. And so if questions come up that pertain to that, they might answer those tonight, but we do have a forum scheduled on October 23rd here in this room again at 6 p.m. that will specifically be about the permitting process and what those agencies look for in the project. So we have that coming up. Our last forum is November 13th, again here in this room, and that will be focused on environment. So if you have questions about environmental impacts and issues at the site itself, there may be someone that can quickly answer it here tonight, but really that will be the focus of that third one. So I'll tell you a little bit about what we're going to go over tonight. We have a wonderful guest speaker that will start the meeting off for us, and I'll introduce him in a moment. But we are going to then talk about 5 topic areas, and you're welcome to submit written questions in advance, or we'll go around and you can raise your hand when we get to them. But the first is going to be regarding things that impact the community when you have a population change, things to consider, and that could be housing, the school district, our infrastructure such as the road system, and that would actually be covered in our second topic of discussion, which has to do with transportation. We'll also touch on health and safety, and we'll touch on the economy, and then lastly we'll do some discussion around the proposed community benefit agreement that Idaho has offered to all of the communities in our area. So that's the format for tonight. Again, we'll have an opening speaker to set the context for us about mining in general, and then we will sort of dive into these topic areas. We may not be able to answer all the questions tonight, but again, our intent as a city is to get this information on the table and try to get those answers for you if we can, and then compile all of that for the City Council and get everyone's concerns, but also what you feel are the benefits of this project. So we're trying to look at the full spectrum of the issues that something like this brings to a community, both positive and any negative. So let's see here. We are taping this tonight, so I think you heard about that when you checked in. And so if you have an issue with being on the recorded video, you might want to be towards the back. But we do intend to tape it and have it available for people to watch later. So then a couple of ground rules. I don't know how many of you have been to a Doing Democracy activity at our public library. So it's again that similar format where we're asking people to be respectful of each other's opinions. Let people speak. I'll have a microphone, so I'll come around for whoever's turn it is to speak. And just be a good, active listener. And I hope you come away tonight learning new information, new perspectives, maybe broader understanding of all sides of the issue. So we will, to keep back. We will attempt to keep speaking time down to about 3 minutes. I have someone that's keeping a little timer for me that'll wave at me. So if I need to politely cut you off, I will, so we can move on to the next person. And if you would like to have the mic, if you could raise your hand or whatever when we get to that part of the discussion. There's restrooms in the back if you need that. And obviously, if there's a fire alarm goes off or something, there's 2 exits. So everybody can get out safe. Okay, so I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, and it is Mr. Tom Blanchard. Some of you may know him. He is a longtime Idahoan, and he has approximately 40 years of activity knowledge, his professional career having to do with mining in Idaho. And he's a historian, and he teaches at all of our state universities and provides teaching certifications to teachers who are going to be teaching history. His specialty is Idaho's mining history. He has been on the Idaho Historical Society for 12 years and was the chair, and was recently involved with the opening of the new Idaho State Museum in Boise. We're really pleased that he was able to make the trip here from Bellevue, Idaho to be with us tonight, and I think you'll really enjoy what he has to share with you to get us started off. So, Mr. Tom Blanchard.
How close do I have to be? Closer? Closer.
There you
go. We'll get that. It's almost intimidating, to come into a process. You've got a huge challenge. There's a lot of opportunities, but a lot of impact in front of you. So I've been asked to kind of review some of the things that have occurred that I've seen in Idaho history relative to mining. And the bottom line is that we haven't had a mine this size open up in Grouse Creek was the last one, a big mine that opened up in 1990. So it's been a long time since any community has gone through this. And there's some lessons to be learned from that. We'll talk about that a little bit, because Custer County, Challis is not the capital, but the county seat, and Challis is the only population center really in Custer County, close to the mine. And they did negotiate a significant agreement with the mining company. And there are a lot of lessons to be learned from that, so I'll go through that. But in the meantime, as just a disclaimer, I have also worked for the Idaho Conservation League and the Boulder White Clouds Conservation Group, particularly dealing with the 2 large mines in the Yankee Fork and Challis area, that would be Grouse Creek and Thompson Creek mine, the big mine up there. And so I've spent years reading their documents and going through the meetings up there and monitoring it. And as part of that contract, I had an opportunity to do a review of all of the large mines that have come into Idaho since mid-60s, when big heap leach open pit mining was the rage. And we have a number of examples. So we have a history in Idaho of large-scale mining like you're approaching here. And the outcomes are kind of interesting, and I'll comment on that later. I think the other additions of my, I don't know if I call this credentials or not, but I was a county commissioner for 2 terms in Blaine County, and then city administrator in the city of Bellevue for 6 years. And so I come with a community interest background, a conservation interest background, and with a kind of a focus of impact on infrastructure. And so that's kind of how I approached this invitation, which I got about 4 days ago. So it's been a quick ramp up. I have spent some time looking at Stibnite over the past, because it's the 4th largest mineralization area that we have in Idaho. They started out in about 1897. So the first mining mill was for mercury. And then it shifted into, during the war period, particularly during the 20s on through the Korean War period, through Stibnite, as an ore, which is antimony and tungsten and gold. Those are the major products that have come out of this. So that's some of the background I have here. I want to make a couple of observations about mining itself, and then I'll make some about the specifics relative to Stibnite. This is a Yebu story. It's huge. They're expecting perhaps a mineral recovery of about $5 to $6 billion. They're looking at a kind of $1 billion to get this thing off the ground. This is a large project. It's going to have a large employment factor. There's a lot of questions about where that employment is going to occur, because some of it's going to be at the mine, but some of it's going to be out here in the community. And that's going to put pressure on you to respond to that. And suddenly you find yourself in a position where it looks like, and McCall may not get this large impact, but the Valley County is certainly going to get this large impact. But there's a possibility of 2,000, 2,500 jobs coming into the valley here. And a lot of them are going to be good paying jobs, particularly those with the mine. A lot of them aren't necessarily going to be good jobs, because they're going to be service-related jobs that support the mine, and they're going to occur in the community. So there's a lot of balancing that's going to have to occur. And the difficulty that really faces this is we don't have much time to put it together. There's a possibility that the record of decision by the Forest Service will occur, 2019, get the right century here. 2019 or 2020, and they would ramp up immediately and start bringing in a workforce for construction, and that workforce is estimated to be about 1,000 people. And they don't have places for those people out there to live. They will eventually have a Stibnite resort for the workforce out there, but it's going to be a man camp out there is what it's going to be. But in the meantime, when they start up, there's going to be enormous infrastructure needs in the community to support that, and you don't have much time to get ready. So I think you've got a huge challenge in front of you. Now let me make some general comments about mining, and I've written these up, so I'm going to be looking down at my notes to make sure I cover it occasionally. I can talk about mining extemporaneously for hours, but I want to stay focused as much as I can here. So that, first of all, most mines are short-term operations. It's rare to have a mine that goes 7 to 10 years. Midas Gold is projecting an actual active mining project of about 12 to 15 years, but with construction startup and then closure and everything, the whole project is looked upon to be 20 to 25 years. And some people might say that's long term, but in terms of the history of McCall, history of Valley County, that's not long term, that's short term. And they're going to ramp up really quick, and when they quit really quick too, so that it disappears, and you need to be prepared and be thinking about both cases, because it won't necessarily follow the timeline that's been projected. In the history of the mines that we've watched in Idaho, is that none of them have finished their operation plan in the way it was proposed and accepted by the Forest Service. None of them. There's just multiple things that can possibly go wrong. It's a very risky industry, in the sense that commodity prices change, and if commodity prices change and get too low, the likelihood is that mine is going to reduce its workforce significantly, or possibly even close. There are other factors that are going to impact that mine as we go along. Environmental factors, things go along with the process that are unanticipated. There's just a number of things that can interrupt and change the time sequence. And, so you don't know for sure when the mine is going to close, and it may run much longer. Thompson Creek is a good example. They expected they'd be mining about 20, 30 years. They opened up in 1980. They just closed down about 2 years ago. They closed down because the investors in the mine, the ownership of the mine, had a more lucrative opportunity in a gold mine in Canada. And so they shifted their workforce and their capital to that higher paying investment. And I think that's something you got to keep in mind when Midas Gold eventually receive the financing that they need to do this, it will shift the responsibility for that mine and the decision making for that mine from Midas Gold to those larger investors. Midas Gold, I presume, it wants to be a big player in this all the way along, but if someone else comes in with the financing that they need, the responsibility for the mine and the decisions of how that mine operates is going to shift to that investor group. And that means that they're going to make their decisions on the basis of things that may not be the most important thing to Valley County and McCall. And in fact, it may be detrimental to Valley County and McCall. And those are something that has happened consistently within the mining community. The control of the mine and the decision how it operates and how much investment the mining company puts into the community is controlled by an outside board rather than a local community board. And that's typical of the mining community. Now, because they're short-term projects, they are transient. They're constantly moving, looking for new projects. Every mining company needs to have reserves so that once they close this down, they can move someplace else. So they're constantly looking for new opportunities that they can shift to. But the miners they hire are also transient, and they have been traditionally in Idaho. We can open up and have a great job prospect right here, but it may not work with the family. These guys are prepared to move fairly quickly and go to other jobs. The history of the industry is that the labor force moves fairly rapidly and can move very quickly. That does not lead to a stable community. Having a workforce of 500 men or so that is living on the site out there, they work for 2 weeks, then they get 2 weeks off, they work for 2 weeks, and they get 2 weeks off. That's not the kind of time involvement that allows them to invest themselves in their community easily. And they are likely not to, a lot of them are likely not to live in the community. It would be very easy, for instance, to live in Boise. It would be easy to live in a lot of places within several hundred miles of here. With the idea in mind, you got a 4-hour drive to get to Cascade, get on the bus, get to the mine for your 2-week shift, and then you get back to Cascade and you're out of here. Now, a consequence of that is the mine is going to describe this as an economic benefit to the community. But a lot of that money will move out of the community very quickly. If you live in Boise, or if you live in Lewiston, or wherever you live and work here on that shift sequence, that money is going to go home to you when you go home on that time off, and it's going to be invested in that community. And your social interest as a family person or as a community person is more likely to be invested in the area where you live, where your family lives. So all of those benefits that may accrue don't necessarily accrue here to Valley County or McCall. It's going to, the mining workforce tends to have a demographic profile. They tend to be young men in the 20 to 40 range. They're heavy equipment operators and mill operators. There's a long tradition about not letting women into the mine, and women are not frequently associated with mining. Although I hope Midas Gold breaks that pattern a little bit with its tradition with mine. Tends to be male-oriented. Another thing, mining can be extraordinarily lucrative. If you look that they're planning to pull out maybe $5 to $6 billion, that's a lot of money, and that's what the investors are looking for. They have recently successfully sold 50% of the outstanding shares, I believe, to Barrick Gold. To me, this is it's a positive sign in the sense that a very large mining company, and the mining industry is really consolidated globally. And there are 6, 7, maybe large mining companies in the world that control the mining industry. Barrick Gold is one of them. And they've decided to invest in this. Now, this tells us several things. One, that there's a probable value out there that Midas Gold holds that looks promising. And secondly, you have a very large mining company who has experience running mines. And that can be a very good thing because you want a company that has experience in your running that operation. And Midas Gold doesn't have a long track record relative to running mine. In the mining industry, there are several levels of mining operations, and you start out at the lowest level, which is prospecting and early development, and then you get junior developers who take mining interests and prove them out and get the permits in place and line up the financing. But the real operation mine normally migrates into one of those larger mining companies. And that can be a good thing. First of all, they usually have fairly deep pockets and they can respond to problems. They have technical expertise, they have a history of running them. And that's the kind of thing you want. You want good management out there, if you can get it. Secondly, mining investors tend to be globally oriented. They're not interested in the issues that we have here in Valley County or McCall. They're interested in return on investment. They're interested in political security, and they want to make sure that the permits are in place before they'll fully commit into investment. So those are the things that investors or big mining companies are looking for. And keep it in mind, one of the things they really are interested in is having a good, stable political community base. They want to be accepted by the community as much as they can. And I think if you look at mining companies, they tend to contribute very generously, usually through local communities. If they're making money and that mine is working, they tend to be good community partners. Now, if they're not making money and the mine isn't working, it can be a very difficult situation for everyone. So I think as this thing progresses, you got to keep your fingers crossed. It's got to work well to work well for you. That's just the bottom line. And another one, a lot of people think, oh, well, we'll find some way to maybe this can stop, or maybe something can happen, or it'll go away, or mining under the 1872 mining law has been declared as the highest best use of the public lands. And what that means is that those agencies that control our public lands, the BLM, the Forest Service, parks, all of those groups, basically cannot say no to a mine when it's proposed appropriately and mitigates for its impact. They cannot say no. And many of the people who are the mineral specialists in those agencies are very excited about having an opportunity to work on a mine this large. I mean, it's a credit to you as a member. If you're the Forest Service and you're the mineralogist for the area, you are going to be working with a huge mine with some of the top mining experts in the world. This is a challenge and an exciting one for a career officer, and he'd love to see this thing go. I mean, they are positive in terms of their desire to see mining work. And so the agency that will make the decision as to whether mining should occur out here is one that I think is aligned positively to say yes to mining. Now, I think the last comment I want to make relative to mining in general is that miners are the most optimistic group that you're going to run into in your life. They will go out with no prospects at all and believe that they're going to come back. Mark Twain, and they tend to be good salesmen too. Mark Twain once commented that the definition of mine is a hole in the ground with a liar in it. I don't want to denigrate Midas Gold here. That is just an old saw that Mark Twain attributed to, or it's attributed to him. There's another one out there that I heard from the local community, and that is that most miners feel that they're within about 5 feet of $1 million, and they're really about 1 million feet from $5. And that's the truth. They are optimistic, and they have a can-do attitude that is overwhelming. Now, there's another professional group out here in America that has a similar optimistic can-do attitude, and that's engineers. And so if you put an engineer in conjunction with a miner, you have an overlap of optimism and an overlap of technical expertise that gets incredible things done. When you think of what the mining industry does, it has a remarkable history. I mean, it's when you go back and even even in the pioneer days, and when you read about what these guys did, it's amazing. But when you see what they're doing technologically today, it's amazing also, and they believe they can fix anything. So when problems occur, they are going to come up with an answer. And we don't know whether that answer is going to work, but I'll guarantee you they'll come up with an answer. I usually, when I do mining programs, I usually start with poetry, and poetry isn't a thing that we usually, and I forgot my poetry book tonight, but I've done this so much that I've got a few of the lines, and I want you to keep these in mind. This is Bill Studebaker, who's the poet. Bill actually died in an accident out here in the South Fork in a kayak several years ago. He was one of the better poets that we ever had. He grew up in the Salmon area. Actually was raised in the Yellowjacket area, and then he went to school in Salmon, and then eventually was in the Blackbird mine, and came out of that and decided he ought to be an English professor. Probably a good move for Bill. But he ended up writing a great book of poetry called The Rat Lady at the Company Dump. And I'm going to give you just a couple of lines because I didn't memorize the whole thing, and apologize for not bringing the book. But he talks about opening up the mind. It's the name of the poem. And he said, promises are legal tender again, and clerks smile after 30 years. And the company promises honeymoons to everyone. And I think that is, you're in the honeymoon period right now. Midas Gold is out here trying to cultivate the community. I think they're doing a pretty good job of that in a lot of ways. They've done a lot of tours. I have taken them to the Stibnite tour that they've done. I did that last summer. I've followed Stibnite for quite a few years. And I think as a company, they are trying to do a good job. On the other hand, they're under a lot of pressure. This deadline for the record decision is coming up. We've got to get everyone in line. And so they're nervous out there. And I think there's a little tension there also. But remember, the company promises honeymoons to everyone. They're optimistic. And so Stibnite. First claims were quite early. Mercury mine. About 1914 to 1922, they mined mercury out there. Mercury was an incredibly valuable, still is, mineral out there, and the thing with mercury is that it escapes fairly easy, it volatilizes easily, and then it can precipitate out into the ground, or it escapes down into the waterways as mercury conduits. And so mercury contamination is a major problem out there. During, after World War I, out through the Korean War, Bradley Mining Company came in here and they were taking antimony, tungsten, and gold, like I was talking about. Again, all of these were really important resources relative to World War II, but in the meantime, they had environmental impacts associated with that. They had a smelter out there, they had tailings ponds that were leaching, they had storage facilities that were not responding properly. And then in the later period of 1970 into the 90s, there were a number of huge gold operations out there, particularly Hecla had one out here. And Hecla had some difficulties with that one. Their tailings pond basically eroded in an irregular fashion. And there are leaching heavy metals out there right now. So the area is significantly damaged. There have been a number of cleanups out there that have focused on small little units, but what Midas brings to the table, and it's different than any other mine we've seen in Idaho, is that they are promising to use the mining process to clean up the mine, and clean up that entire area. And when they walk away, wall up, we are going to have a stabilized environment out there. Now that's a difficult promise for them to make, but I think it's an important one that we all have to consider as an important outcome because the area is highly contaminated and it's sitting right on the salmon, one of the major tributaries to the salmon. And that's an important commodity, not a commodity, it's an important symbolic resource for all of us in Idaho. So protecting that environment is important, and if we can do it by mining, it's something that I know everyone's going to look at and say, well, I hope this works. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Now, Stibnite is now in the process, or not Stibnite, Midas Gold is in the process of going through the NEPA. They bring two arguments to the table. One, that they do have a new technology that they think will allow them to handle the minerals that were typically unavailable to earlier technologies. And boy, that's the story of mining historically, is that mines never run out of material, because yesterday's waste stock is tomorrow's milk stock. That's something that occurred all of the time. And they have a new technology that they think is going to fly out there that will allow them to recover most of the high values and most of the damaging values out there and isolate them in a way that they'll walk away with a fairly reasonably stable site. Now, of course, the other thing that they're talking about is that they will clean up that area. Those are two significant arguments. And I think we all have to look at them and hope for the best, at least. Make sure I'm heading in the right direction relative to my notes here. Looking at the size of the workforce, they're projecting 1,000 workers out there to start up the construction, as I mentioned earlier. Then they will drop down. Once the construction is in place, they'll drop down, and they're looking at a workforce of 600 to 700. And then that will run for 12 to 15 years. And as they start to close up the mine, they'll drop that workforce down to about 200 for 3 years. And then they need to do maintenance and monitoring for 7 or 8 years. It's hard to say how long they'll have to monitor it. And they may have treatment in perpetuity going on down there, water treatment that will just go on forever. So there may be a permanent presence out there, but a very small workforce associated with that. And that final cleanup will run about 7 years. So overall, within somewhere between 20 to 25 years, you're looking at a ramp up, a huge ramp up to about 1,000 workers, then dropping down a little bit, staying stable, and dropping off. But there are going to be a lot of side jobs created as a result of the mine coming in, of the mine coming in. You're going to need additional gas stations, you're going to need additional clerks, you're going to need storage, you're going to need supplies for the miners, you're going to need more housing, you're going to need a whole number of things that will create additional jobs. And Midas has suggested that maybe as many as 1,000 jobs. If you look at it, that's a huge income increase for the community. And if it comes really quick, again, it's going to be a difficult challenge. Valley County has about 11. I looked at the website and they said 11,000.
11,000.
11. You take 1,000 workers out there, let's drop it down to 600. The main thing, they'll average 600-700 people. Then you add maybe 1,000 or so jobs in here, and then you throw some family in, and some of those people stay, some won't. But you could have easily 3,500 people coming into the community within a little quick time. Now, 35 relative to 11,000, that's over 25%. That's a growth of 25% in 3 years. That's difficult to manage. And that's one of the challenges in front of you. I'm not convinced that McCall is going to have the majority of those challenges. The experience, for instance, in the Chalice area was that they set up 2 subdivisions, for instance, to accommodate miners. And what they found out is the miners didn't want to buy those houses. They couldn't get them to buy them, and they couldn't sell them. And they ended up trucking those houses. So a lot of them went to Idaho Falls and the Pocatello area, but a lot of them went over to Oregon to the Rajneesh community over there. They just loaded them on trucks and moved them over. It's kind of funny when you think about it. But the fact was that because a lot of these guys, and I'm going to say guys because it tends to be a male-dominated thing, I apologize for my insensitivity here, but a lot of them are going to be from outside the community and they want to stay outside. They've got their home someplace else, their family is there, and that's typical of the mining community. These guys historically would travel 100 miles and work, and then come home and spend a couple of days and then out again to work and then come home. And I think that's a pattern. You're going to see some of it. But there's going to be quite a few of them. And those additional jobs inside the community are definitely going to require housing in this area right here. The question then is, how much of the projected money that's pumped into the economy is going to stay here? What are the benefits that are residual to the valley? And that's something that's very difficult to predict. It's not clear. We have no idea right now how many people will live here and form community bonds and invest in the community. We have no way of estimating that. There are some estimates out there that maybe, I think Stibnite suggested there might be about 400 families or so might invest and buy into the community, but that's a small number relative to several thousand jobs. So while it may be promoted that there's a lot of money coming into the economy, the paycheck will come here, but it may leave immediately too. And certainly the paycheck for the investors is going to leave the community too. It's not clear just how large that economic benefit is going to be. The miners tended to be renters if they could. They'd like that short-term agreement because they may not be here 2 years from now. And I would also suggest that the work schedule that is set up where you're on 14 days and off 14 days and on 14 days, that means you're home for, maybe 10 or 12 days because you have to drive back and forth. And then you're at work. And you are not part of any community when you're doing that. And so while there are a lot of good jobs associated with the mining community, they're not jobs that are necessarily community oriented. It's very difficult to integrate this type of employment base into your community in a way that's very positive and successful. Another comment is that mine plans of operation never work the way they're planned. And then, how many of us plan things and go, well, all of us. My life didn't work the way I planned it. Good thing, too. I did some dumb planning when I was young. Maybe. But the fact is that they don't work the way they are planned. They don't, for instance, the ground scrape and Headland, the ground scrape mine, seriously overestimated value in its ore body. And when it got to the mill, those values weren't there. And as a result, all of the economic justification of that mine, they put about $100 million into that thing in the first 3 years, getting it open and running. And they shut it down within 17 months because the values weren't there. They just failed to do their exploration appropriately. And those kinds of technical difficulties occur and could occur here. Environmental issues occur. And there's no way to figure out what they're going to be right now, but we know that working in a watershed, we know that they have a transportation system that goes through, they're trying to stay away from the watershed areas, but transportation is a big problem, and in the case of Thompson Grid Mining, they have tipped over about 6 trucks, and they're right along the Salmon River corridor, and a number of those trucks have dumped, the mill concentrates that have been shipped out to its mill. Dumping into the Salmon River. So we've got to plan on the fact that there will be some environmental consequences that we haven't anticipated. Another big one is commodity prices. Gold right now, I'm not sure what it is today, but what are we, $1,100, $1,200 an ounce? And antimony is a fixed price, and tungsten is a fixed price, but they're not fixed prices. Those move up and down, and occasionally they're going to move down in such a way that the mine is not profitable. And those investors have got to look at that and turn around and say, well, do I want to continue putting my money into this? And maybe I'm only 5 years into the program. So that, the commodity prices have a large influence on this. And the investors would quite easily change and decide to shift their money to another project. Mining is not always compatible with local values. When I read in the webpage about the development of McCall, basically there was a decision made by the business community a number of years ago that we needed to emphasize recreation. And so things like outdoor activities, quality of life, a resort community, a destination resort community type of environment has slowly developed here. And mining is not necessarily compatible with that. Environmentally, it is not necessarily compatible, but socially too. There's a different lifestyle associated with the mining community and what you find in the McCall community. And integrating those two is going to be a significant challenge. Mines aren't sustainable by definition. I mean, their whole idea is to extract 100% of the value and leave. Sustainability would be a method by which you do this in such a way that it just went on for a long, long time in a very well-controlled fashion. But that's not the way the mining community works. They want to get in and get out. And then, and you will be given arguments that there are a lot of benefits to the community. But the question is, what are the long-term benefits? There may be short-term benefits that some people in this community are going to do very well by. But there are going to be some losers. There are winners and losers in every operation. We don't know exactly who those losers are going to be right now, or the winners, but it's not clear that those benefits are always long-term. And you have to engineer some kind of an agreement with the company that if recreation and quality of life is the thing you're selling with the community here, is the basis for your economy right now, you've got to continue to be able to build that as you move through this mining period so that when they leave, you have a substantial economic basis. Excellent. And that's going to be something you have to work with the mining company on. And one of the important questions is the mine going to create a cost burden on the taxpayers? Are they going to look for, let's say, economic development money, for instance, that will help some communities improve their sewers, their water systems, their transportation systems? I know here in McCall you've got a couple of major works in the highway that come through here. You're going to have a lot of trucks coming through. Who's going to pay for those intersection improvements? And they're not going to be cheap. They're going to cost a lot of money. And they're going to take maintenance. And who's going to be responsible for that? If the mine did not come in, you wouldn't be doing those projects. So the impact, the consequence of the mine, is really the mine's responsibility. We've got to find a way to have them acknowledge that and help you address that problem. And McCall's vision and their values might be different from the mining company's values. I think that's self-evident for most of us. And I think it's important that you go back and you review what your values are. I think as a city and as a county, I mean, I understand both of you have just reworked your comp plan, but I think you need to go back and look at it and see what's in that plan and make sure that you're comfortable that you can support what's going to happen given your values here. And that'll be a challenge also. Now, as I understand it, there's going to be a number of working groups created. To me, there's a couple of them that I would describe as, well, they are good PR opportunities for the mining company. One is going to be the foundation. They're going to put $100,000 in it right away, and then when I think the record of decision comes out, you get another, and then when operations take off, you get $250,000, and then you get $250,000 a year to an operation, and you get $1 million at the end. $250,000 a year is a valley-wide or county-wide contribution. That's nice, but it isn't going to solve your infrastructure problem. Those are going to solve playground equipment problems. They're going to add more seats, maybe to a theater, a community theater. They're going to do things for maybe your school athletic program, but they're not going to handle your big infrastructure problem. But it's a good gesture on their part, and I think we need to think strongly about how you would want to participate in that. Now, one of the other ones is the community agreement, and I understand that's a topic of some contention. I would make the argument that it's to your benefit to be in that community agreement because you need to keep an eye out as to what's going on with that line. If you're not in that community agreement, you won't get that inside connection that allows you to touch base with someone who wants to get information. Most of the other members, I think, of the municipal and county members are probably going to join that. And that's going to be a communication system that allows the mine to speak to the community, and the community can speak to the mine. It's got to be a two-way street. And so I'm going to encourage you to consider joining that strongly, because you've got to keep your lines, you've got to keep your eye on what they're doing. Now, I understand there's another advisory committee that they work with. The way the mine system works under federal lands is the Forest Service will be the lead agency. The Forest Service will take the plan of operation and they hand it out to the other critical agencies like Highway Department, Department of Lands, Idaho DEQ, EPA. There's a number of them. Well, I think they identified Valley County to sit with that group, and so Valley County, through the county commissioners. And this is probably the most appropriate through the commissioners because it's on county land. It's not in a municipality. It's really a county land that's about 40 miles away. So it's appropriate that it runs through the commissioners. But that's going to be an important role. And I think the city of McCall needs to pay close attention to who that representative might be to that advisory group. Because when there are technical details, the mine is going to send this information out to that advisory committee. And you're going to get the best information that you can get by participating in some way with that. Now, McCall will not be able to participate because it's going to be run through the county. So you've got to work with the county to make sure that you have someone in there that can speak for your interests and represent you when the time comes. Now, the next question then is when the mine closes down, there are those that want to stay in the community and have jobs at the mine. But a lot of those jobs are not going to be transferable to the work that's available in the community. And so it's going to take retraining. And this is going to be a difficult period when it closes down. As just a small aside, when Chalice went through this process, the teachers in Chalice, and I taught a lot of teacher recertification classes, had a lot of Chalice teachers in there, and they were commenting that it was very difficult to get the students to pay attention to education as a key to a long-term career, because they knew that at age 18, when they got out of high school, they could go out and get a job at the mine. And the mine was very careful to solicit local people because they want that connection with the community. It's a good PR thing on their part, and it's great money for that 18-year-old. If he goes out and buys a boat, and he buys a four-wheel drive truck, he gets a dog, and then the mine shuts down. And what do you have? You got a guy that can drive a really great construction truck on a mine. None of those going around McCall. And so we've got to think in terms of transition that occurs and what happens after the mine closes. Most of those local graduates in the Chalice area are somewhat strung out right now. They've been with the mine for a number of years. They're suddenly laid off. They don't want to move to Juneau, Alaska, or up into Canada. And so they're living in Chalice, but there aren't employment opportunities that they used to, and they're not trained for anything. The only mine that we have had open up that has negotiated an agreement like this is the Thompson Creek mine. They sat down with the commissioners, the city of Chalice, and tried to identify infrastructure needs. And the mine put the money up front to develop and improve the sewer systems, the water systems. They built 2 new schools. They built 2 subdivisions to accommodate miners and miner families. They invested a lot of money right up front, and I think the package was something like $18–20 million. Unfortunately, the mine didn't operate the way they expected, and so it was supposed to be a advanced tax payment, and the anticipated taxes were never earned in the sense that the mine didn't produce the way it was expected to. And as a result, when the mine shut down, Chalice ended up owing the mining company money that had been paid for advanced taxes. So I think the key here, the bottom line, is that you've got to be able to negotiate with the mine in a manner that leaves you whole when they leave, and we don't know when that will be. mine company, in this case Concentrate Mine, they came to Chalice and they said, we invested this based on tax payment stream. And our tax payments didn't equal our investment, and you owe us X. Chalice shut their school system down to a 4-day work week. They shut one school down completely. They moved those subdivisions out of there. And they're suffering right now as a result of it. Property values in Chalice are rock bottom. If you want a nice, I'm just saying myself, if you want a house cheap in Chalice, it's out there. And this was the result of a really well-intended contract. So you have an extraordinary challenge. You've got to be able to, by you, I'm talking about the larger community. You've got to be able to negotiate with the mine, and that means that you've got to be able to sit down with them at their committees. And that, I think, is going to be the bottom line. It's going to be antagonizing occasionally, but it's a project that's going to affect you.
Thank you so much. So before we get into some question, answer, discussion, again, thanks to Tom for giving us a lot of food for thought for tonight. But one small detail, with the owner of a gray and white Toyota with license plate 168, please move your car. It's in somebody's camping spot.
Stay on the fire lanes too.
Oh, it's blocking the fire lane. I don't know who that is, but we won't look if you stand up and go out in your car. Anyway. All right.
Does anybody else have questions about transportation that they want to add in the envelope?
Now, are we going to do transportation first?
That's, I think, transportation would goes first.
So, let's see, I think what I'm going to do. And I forgot to mention that if you do not feel comfortable asking a question in front of everybody tonight, but you do have a question, comment, or some feedback you want the council to receive, you can. At the end of the evening, we put some chart paper up on the windows in that corner, and there's some markers. You can jot down whatever thoughts you have before you leave, and we'll make sure that council sees those as well. Okay, so Tom gave us some thoughts around a number of things about the community impacts from mining in general. And I did get a couple of questions submitted tonight from members of the audience here. And so I do want to recognize that we have staff and leadership of Midas School here tonight. So if they feel comfortable answering the question, they can certainly do so. So here's the first one. Will Midas School use TVT, which is Treasure Valley Transit, that is our public transportation provider here in McCall? Will Midas still use Treasure Valley Transit to bus mine employees to the area for work? Will that be an investment in our community?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mackenzie Lyon. I work for Midas School. And I wanted to just really quickly introduce myself and then some of the other folks that are in the room with us that will help answering some of these questions this evening. Laurel, do you want to stand up? Laurel is our president and CEO of Midas Gold Idaho. We also have John Meyer, who's our director, our VP of Development and Operations. So he can answer a lot of questions like the one we just got, and I'll pass it on to him in just a moment. So get ready, John. Michael Bogart, our legal counsel. Who else? Haley Couture, education coordinator. And Dale Kerner, our manager of permitting. Dave was here. Dave works up on site and manages most of our safety operations up at site. Who else is here? Is Belinda still here? No. Okay. And I will just point out quite quickly, I'm a student of history, and I very much appreciate Tom's comments. I think the greatest thing about studying history is it gives us an opportunity to learn and to adapt, and that's exactly what we've done as a company. The first thing to know is that the industry standard for women in mining is 10%. You can tell by having a CEO who is a female leading this company that we are changing the face of mining, and we're doing it quite intentionally. This company right now has 30% women, and that is a standard that we hope to continue. There are also many other changes in the mining industry that we can talk about tonight to point out why kind of historic generalizations don't necessarily apply. But John, do you want to answer the question about Treasure Valley Transit? It's my understanding at this point that we haven't made any commitments about vendors once we are in operation, but we do prioritize hiring Idaho and using Idaho services. So John, I'll see if you've got a better answer to that than I do.
I think what you said is accurate. We haven't made commitments in regard to who will transport the folks. We are not likely to do that in-house. In other words, we likely wouldn't purchase the buses, but we certainly open up to that option. But I think it's not something we've made a commitment to on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, another question that was submitted tonight is, can you please compare or describe the difference between logging trucks and mining trucks moving through the town? What is the difference? So, I don't know if that's something we can answer tonight or not.
Yep.
But I can say that I don't want to comment on logging trucks because now I'm getting out of my area of expertise. But I can comment that our trucks are it will be transporting goods and services to and from the site. Will be road legal trucks that are trucks that you would see driving on the road every day. The standard that we use to design the road and the standard that we use for the vehicles to transport is called WB67. If you want to look that up, but that's the road. That's the truck standard that we use to design the road, and then we'd expect the larger sort of trucks driving the site would be here too.
So, and I think somebody
mentioned the bypass.
Oh, okay. I think someone from ITV might be here tonight. I don't know if they have a comment. Is that you, Justin?
Sure, I don't know. I'm not familiar with logging trucks either, but I can confirm it's WB67.
All right, well, I'll go Google it. Okay. So.
About that, do you project most of the trucking? I'm loud. Do you project most of the trucking coming from the mine with the milled product coming out to actually go through McCall or go through Cascade and then down to Boise?
Did everybody hear that?
The question was whether or not the trucks would, from the Horn Lake Highway, would be going south onto Highway 55, or it would be going and through Cascade, or it would be going north through McCall. And we estimate that it's probably about 50-50. That's the best. You know, we have to know exactly where we're buying every single product to know exactly are they going south or north. But the trucks would be legal to go both directions and capable to go both directions.
What will the main trucks be carrying? What will be in there's logs in the log.
Right. We don't. Right. So most of the trucks going to the site are where we have more trucks going to the site that are full than are leaving the site. So they're going to be example will be fuel, diesel for our mining fleet. They will be process reagents, flotation reagents for our process plant. Cyanide will be trucks that will be transported in dry form. Yes, that's process reagents. We are not planning to truck acid to the site. No. We're not planning to truck nitric acid or something.
Let's everybody use our hands and
we
ask
are
for time to speak on the microphone, please.
Here.
Pass the mic back.
So,
How about,
I'm sorry.
so if we all right, so I think there is a question that we got submitted versus via the online version that might help with this aspect of it. We had a question submitted that might be along this line. How can the public be assured of safety with the transportation of various hazardous materials on the roads through this area? They're winding roads. So I don't know, I think that would be along the same lines, I guess, assuring the public or what safety standards.
Maybe
If that's
ITD
ITD
can
or
speak to what they
DEQ.
do today.
As far as ATD goes, guess maybe back up a little bit. So anytime there's work, for example, Midas Gold came in, they contacted us a couple of years ago. Our experience has been very positive with them. They've been very proactive, wanting to be good community, putting money into the community. So we've actually looked at 3 intersections. So Warm Lake, Dinehart, and Boydston were the 3 intersections that we're looking at doing improvements for the trucking. As far as what materials and everything they'd be in, that would be in transit, they'd follow the regulations, which ITD doesn't have anything to do with that per se. It would be a different agency.
So I'll do a couple more that I received before we move to another topic area, and then I'll come to the back there in a second. How will Midas Gold or ITD manage the additional truck traffic in combination with the tourist traffic? Are there considerations for when the trucks are traveling versus tourists versus general public?
So in our plan of restoration and operations that we submitted to the Forest Service, and after many conversations before submitting that plan with communities of Warm Lake, Cascade, folks in McCall, Donley, etc., we committed in the plan of restoration and operation to really try to concentrate our traffic during workday hours, so Monday through Friday, kind of daylight hours. We've also had conversations with folks in communities like Warm Lake on, that, and part of the reason of having the community advisory group would be to, we're not gonna, or we should do the best we can, I should say, on limiting traffic on heavy weekends, etc. Right now, we do anticipate 65 round trips on average a day. When you look at traffic already on Highway 55 at Warm Lake, there are about 5,000 trips or vehicles on that road a day.
How many trucks?
How many trucks? I don't know the exact number of how many trucks. I don't know if ITD has that number. Not all of our vehicles are large. A lot of it, there's a combination of both regular sized vehicles and then the trucks that you see on the road every single day.
Truck carrying fuel, I would assume we're talking about a huge weight vehicle.
So I think that we could grab these detailed questions in our notes. Like I said at the beginning, if we can't get a specific answer tonight just off the top of people's heads, I think there are materials on the Forest Service website that they have published that might include some of these details, but we'll grab these concepts of things that the community definitely wants the council to consider and try to get that information for them, and we'll make that available also. So obviously what's being transported and when and how often is definitely a question. I'm going to go to the back because this gentleman had his hand up before you. Okay. Pardon? Am I not putting it close enough to my mouth? Sorry. Oh, did I? Okay. So somebody, I'm sorry, had their hand up right here.
I think it's Laurel.
I'm Mackenzie.
Mackenzie. Okay. Mackenzie, you had the answer as to how many trips were made at Warm Lake intersection. What about the other two, Boydston and
Yes, Boydston, McCall. I have that number with me. Give me a second. So we've done extensive traffic studies over the last 7 years on these roads. That traffic study has been submitted both to the City of McCall and to the Forest Service as part of the NEPA process. It's something that we are required to do. I will quickly try to find my exact notes, but I believe that traffic was pretty comparable going through McCall, about 5,000 vehicles per day. Our plan, of course, I don't think it was mentioned earlier, but is to use the bypass so that we're not going through downtown McCall for vehicles that would go that way. I can definitely give to the city kind of a more detailed breakdown of the traffic studies we've done so far. I know the city has done their own traffic studies, as has ITD. So I don't know if ITD or the city has more information on that.
Okay, well, the city's traffic study was done for our transportation master plan, which is independent of the Midas School operation, and it was completed before that. But it is available on our website if you would like to look at traffic engineering data. Okay, so does anybody have any other questions or thoughts to throw out for the council or the staff to consider related to infrastructure? We talked about transportation. And then I'll have Tom make a final comment on this topic area. So I'll go here and then here.
So you referred to the Norm Lake intersection. I assume that means all traffic that's coming in and out of the line, both going and coming. And if that were the case, I assume it would be roughly 8 trucks per hour on that road. Well, if it's 65,
About half the vehicles are trucks, and about the other half are light vehicles. So when we're talking about trucks and the numbers we're using, about half of them are light vehicles and half of them are trucks.
thank you.
It is my understanding that the truck traffic on the highway does way more damage, those big heavy trucks, than the cars will. I was wondering if there's any plan to give the county extra money for both the intersections and the damage, like on the Warm Lake. I mean, we can hardly maintain our county roads now. All of a sudden, we're going to have these huge trucks, at least 30 a day going down the Warm Lake Highway. Is Midas Gold going to make that highway or any other county highways better with their operation?
I think one of the important things to point to already is the work that we already do with the county on road maintenance, particularly on Stibnite Road and also on Johnson Creek Road. Not only helping to fund that work, but doing some of the work ourselves when we can. We are absolutely open to conversations with the county and the Idaho Department of Transportation on addressing any impacts from our traffic on the roads currently or in the future.
Okay, so I'm going to say last thoughts on this. Eric, got a couple more hands. Did you want to do the wrap up to this topic, or do you
I
want
wanted to add one comment.
Okay.
When, as they go through the record of decision, they will talk about transportation, but the transportation contracts will be a relationship between Midas Gold and an independent trucking firms who provide this service, and it is outside of the purview of the record of decision. So if there are difficulties with transportation, particularly driving incidents, accidents, inappropriate vehicle activity, you can't go back to the Forest Service and force them to make the mine straighten up and do it right, because it's a private third-party contract, and it's sometimes very difficult to get the mining company to hard-nose these drivers into doing it correctly. It's been a very difficult thing with Thompson Creek Mine, and they have had about 6 major tip-overs of material in there. Now, there have been some, safety here is the biggest issue, but this is a third-party contract that is going to be very difficult to interfere with as a public. Whereas if there is some violation associated with the record decision and the plan of operation, then you can force or put pressure on the Forest Service to come in and intervene and get that straightened out. But you can't do that with a lot of the private third-party contracts.
Who holds the liability?
Well, that's something we'll have to jot down and find out more about, because I don't know. So Mayor, did you have something you wanted to say?
Thank you. I have a question for the ITD guy. You mentioned 3 intersections that need to be upgraded. Are you going to pay for that?
I didn't earn my check tonight. So as part of the traffic impact study that's always done, working through Midas Gold, that has been our comments back to them that these improvements need to be made. So they would actually be done. The money would come from Midas Gold to do those improvements in order to issue those permits.
Okay, so, oh boy, warning topic.
Are those improvements going to be tax dollars that have to be paid back if the mine fails?
That's something that would be discussed later, but the improvements would be done before they came in and started work. That makes sense. So the intersections would be improved, the money would have to be upfront invested.
And as he was saying before, like with Chalice, they didn't get their tax dollars, so they have to give the money back.
That would be, that's not where ITD would be involved. That would be whatever the agreement is with the city and
I think I'm hearing, okay. So I know I didn't get to every raised hand, so if you keep that question in mind and jot it on the paper, we'll capture it. Let's move on to another topic. So Tom or Mr. Blanchard talked about a few things that can come up when you have a population change or influx of new people to a community. So I'm wondering if anybody out there has questions related to that, which would be housing, or let's see, what did I have jotted down here? Impacts to the school district, anything related to those types of subjects. So I'm going to start over here and then make my way that way.
I'm wondering, kind of a question for Tom as well as Midas people, but Tom, in your studies of historic mines in Idaho, like when gas stations are made and all this infrastructure comes into a community outside of roads as well, what is your experience and like what happens to those things afterwards? Are they kept up? Are they put to other uses? Thinking also of like the Ski Hill Tamarack, like what happens afterwards and how can we influence that planning process now?
I think I know.
Yeah,
No, I don't want to.
that's okay.
The question is, how were these resources utilized after the mine left or shut down, or they were not needed because of over planning? Again, we don't have a lot of experience. Chalice basically, I think, took one of the schools and they made it part of their city hall and part of their administration, but they had an empty building there for a long, long time. Those were the private investments. They either continued to survive or they went bankrupt and they quit and went out of business. And there's a number of businesses in Chalice that have gone down. Some have survived, but others failed. And that's just the nature of private enterprise. They took a risk on it privately. The community's taking a risk now on terms of the infrastructure, and most of the things can continue to be used. The refunds that Chalice had to pay were just relative to several specific items, that they didn't have to change or refund or change their sewer system or their water system, but there were a couple of buildings that they had to pay back for. You hope you don't get there.
I'm Eric Fortune with the Idaho Department of Commerce, so I just thought I'd make a couple comments. Is this better? I do talk loud. Okay. I just thought I'd try. So some things that we see that, and I encourage everyone, if you go to the Department of Labor's website, there's actually a study that they just came out with this summer called The Status of Rural Idaho. And it was done by Sam Wolkenhauer. He's a regional labor economist out of Maine 1, which is up near Coeur d'Alene. And that just kind of talks about some of the issues going on with rural Idaho. And I think that you don't have to be, all of you see, I think, some of the issues that are going on where populations in rural Idaho are getting older. There's less investment being made in your rural communities. And that's something as the department, we're always struggling to figure out how we're going to deal with and how we're going to help. It pains me, I've been to Chalice many times, and it pains me when I go up there and I talk to community leaders and they say, what are we going to do? How are we going to make improvements to this area? How are we going to get kids to come up here and want to live? If you look at Valley County currently, I just saw a report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it's not the oldest in the region being Southwest Idaho, but Valley County trends older compared to Boise and the metro area, which again is no surprise, but that creates challenges. When you want it for a healthy community, you want to be able to attract younger kids, you want to attract younger families who bring kids with them. So those are the things that we see when we, and I'll be honest, Midas Gold's they've worked with us for a couple of years. They came out, they're very proactive in wanting our assistance and letting us know their plans. And for us, we see a really great benefit to wanting to try to encourage investment, because in Idaho, when you have a community that doesn't get investment, that community starts to kind of shrink and diminish a little bit. And it's the same thing with businesses. When we work with corporations, and we work with them from across the world, and you're dealing with factories in cities, and they're just one of many. If that factory doesn't get investment, then you have to start to wonder what's going to happen to that factory 10 years down the road. And so that's just kind of the things that we think about and why we're always encouraged about when a community and a company wants to make an investment in the area. That helps.
All right, so I did see two hands here, and then I'll come back over here.
I used to work around the mining industry down in Nevada. I was a law enforcement officer down there. Along with infrastructure, it's going to be a huge hit of law enforcement, EMS, fire, hazardous materials, and things like that. Is Midas, or their companies that they're going to have with them, assist those agencies with beefing up patrols, accident response, EMS, hazmat. I was a hazmat technician level 4 down there. I don't like rubber suits, and then these guys up here, not I could either. So, are they going to be able to help out doing that, plus EMS response to the mine from Cascade?
The short answer is absolutely. And if Kyle is still here, Kyle, do you want to talk a little bit right now about our coordination already and those relationships we have with emergency services, or Dave, whichever is better?
Dave, you can chime in if I will speak and you expand upon it. Hopefully everybody can hear me. I'll try and speak loudly. Right now, for all of our hazardous materials loads that come in and out of the project site, which are predominantly fuel, we escort that fuel in and out of the project site. We have a pilot car, a chase car, and emergency response equipment, so we can adequately respond to an incident if they ever do occur at that point in time, and prevent it from getting worse if an incident does occur. Additionally, on top of that, we also allow the city of McCall to come down and utilize our emergency response equipment that we keep here at the office. We have extra material at the project site to respond to spills in Pant Lake last year. There was a fuel oil tank for one of the houses right on the lake that started leaking into the lake. So they asked if they could borrow our response trailer, all our response equipment and everything else. And it was no questions asked, yes, please come get it, and we bring it down to you, so that these things can be taken care of. Safety around transportation, material management, hazardous response, we take this very, very seriously. We partner with the local communities in the backcountry to provide services. When we're doing drilling operations, we keep an EMT on staff 24/7 while we're drilling. We will shut down our operations if there's an incident down in Yellow Pine, out of the Johnson Creek Airport, so that our EMT can go assist those emergency situations. And we've done that in the past, and we're happy to do that in the future. During our operations, we will be required to have our own mine emergency response team on site 24/7 to be able to respond to an incident if it does occur. Our staff at mines generally always will support their own emergency services on the site. I do not foresee us changing that as we move forward. We will have our own emergency services to be able to respond to accident and injuries on site, as well as having our own helitack site to be able to facilitate life flight support into the area for not only our employees, but public, mine rescue, backcountry flame crashes, you name it, we're there to support. I mean, last year we rescued a baker's dozen, a little bit better than that, of hunters that were trapped in the backcountry that got caught by that early September storm. They got snowed in, 7-foot drifts. A wife of one of the groups called the sheriff's office, they referred them to us. We took our equipment in, plowed open the road, got those miners out, brought them hot coffee right away, and a satellite phone so that they could call their loved ones. We really do put safety of our employees, the environment, and the public in the forefront of our operations, and we're not afraid to shut down things that we do to make those things happen.
Thank you. Okay, I have a.
You guys, Terry.
Hold on a second. I'll bring it over in a second. This nice woman's been waiting very patiently for me to bring her the microphone, so I'm going to give her her turn.
Hello, I'm here this evening representing the McCall School District. I believe it was in 2014, Midas Gold made a presentation to our school board. At the time, we requested an impact study, given your human resource department and your camps, where they would be located and what the impact would be in our school district. We have yet to receive that study. It may have been premature, but we are requesting that study. We are in the process of doing facilities planning and strategic planning. Contrary to the gentleman from the Department of Commerce, our community is growing. We are on a growth trajectory, and we are looking, our schools are growing, and as our younger populations are moving into our middle school and high school, our general population is at its highest point in the last 20 years. And we expect we're going to move to 3A. However, if we are good stewards of the public funds, we do not want to take the risk that happened in Chalice, and we want to do good planning. We don't want to be reactive, we want to be proactive. So I'm asking you for that impact study so we can do our studies and we can work together and do what's best for our community and our kids. Because frankly, if they're there, we serve them as free public education for all. And it's not just this community, but we have a school in Yellow Pine that is now closed. And if we have to open that school, that will be major dollars. And so we'll be needing to work with you as far as contribution funding.
Thank you. All right, wandering way back over in this corner. Do I have a Fitbit? No, I don't.
I just had a simple question for the gentleman over there. Dave? I'm sorry. Are you required to carry berms that still contain the full load of the diesel that you're taking on the trucks?
We are not required to by any laws. We have made that internal commitment to be able to contain the capacity of one of the trucks in case that one of their compartments or whatever will roll over an accident. We have portable, basically bladders that we carry in an emergency response trailer that we can unload that truck into.
Is that trailer with the truck?
Yes, it
Okay,
travels
thank you.
downstream of the vehicles during every fuel.
Okay. Okay, so Erin, who is the wonderful person that helped put this all together, thank you, Erin. She's reminded me that to stay on schedule to end in 2 hours. We have about 5 minutes left for this topic, or we can segue into health and safety, because that's kind of where we're at. And we do have, sorry, I'm going to point you out, but we have Sean McAllister here from St. Luke's, so if there's questions about impacts to our medical system, he may be able to answer them, or at least hear them and know that we'll be looking for answers later. So, does anybody else have questions related to the general community housing, things like that? Yes, or the...
There's one at the front,
and
a question about housing.
Okay, and then I also, it would be great if Mackenzie or one of the other folks from Ida School at some point would like to let you know that they do have drop-in Q&A sessions with their staff, so there's other opportunities to get one-on-one time with these folks for specific detailed questions. So maybe at the end you can want to know about that. Okay, where was this person?
I'm one of those worst of the optimists. I'm a mining engineer, licensed by the state of Idaho.
Super
and I had the pleasure and opportunity to run a mine for about 30 years in southeast Idaho. I would encourage, I'm not sure if our speaker tonight considered the phosphate mines and the phosphate operations that go on there, or the work that's been done for over 100 years in Silicon Valley. But I would encourage the city and the local community that have these sorts of questions to get in contact with Caribou County, the Soda Springs School District, and the city of Soda Springs and ask these same questions. Chalice, Custer County has a real bad taste and some problems that came out of the operation there. I don't know that the remarks tonight necessarily characterized it as they would characterize it. And there were some things, also there's another community agreement there with Idaho Cobalt, which the company put up upfront money, made it available to people, and after 3 years there were nobody coming forward asking for money or help. So there's a lot of room here. And I would just want to say that there is a very good mining record in the state of Idaho. The Forest Service, BLM, Department of Lands, EPA, NIMS, all these alphabet soup of federal and state agencies do an outstanding job. I also had the opportunity to serve on advisory boards for the BLM and Forest Service. Know and understand some of the challenges that they face. And those guys aren't there trying to make a name for themselves. Some of the fiercest challenges that we ever got in the permitting process were from those federal and state representatives that were making us toe the line and do the job right. So there are some other excellent resources within the state of Idaho, and I just hope that the city will take advantage of those.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. How about if you have a question related to this topic and I didn't get to it, if you would jot it down, or we can circle back around if we still have time. So one of the topics that I mentioned earlier was if there were any issues or questions that people wanted to raise for us to consider related to health and safety impacts. Is that okay?
This kind of segues into health and safety, I think. So it's kind of twofold. I was wondering what the current population of McCall is at this point. Do you know? 3,200. And then, and I realize that the housing probably won't be directly impacting McCall. was wondering how the sewage treatment facility is doing, basically. And then if the housing is not going to be in McCall, if there are going to be 1,000 new people coming to this county, you know, as a plumber, I'm wondering, where does all the sewage go? What's going It flows out to the affluent, you know, fields out by our house.
All right. Is anybody here from the Pitt Lake Sewer District? I don't know if they came. Well, I don't know that we can answer.
I can talk a little bit about housing, at least for my.
Okay, that's fine. And then, but in terms of, I'll get you.
Sorry. That was funny. Well, maybe we'll let you talk. I don't know.
So in terms of planning, which I think is what you're asking about, how are we going to plan for potential new homes needed and things like that? I don't know if anyone from Valley. Oh, what does Midas have planned? I thought you were asking what do Valley County or McCall have planned? The housing.
We're talking about housing in general for a moment, and then. So right now, as Tom mentioned earlier, the plan is to build housing on site for 2 week on, 2 week off shifts. So if you work at the mine, you live at the mine for 2 weeks. I can have either probably John, talk about how we plan on treating sewer and water up at that facility. The in-plan economic study that was conducted in association with our plan anticipated that we would hire existing people from this valley, about 150 people who already live in this region, and that 120 others would potentially move to this region. Other people, you could live in Emmett, could live in Boise, could live in New Meadows, could live in Horseshoe Bend. But from what the data we have now and the economists who were able to look at it, that's what we anticipate. About 120 individuals coming here to live here for jobs. John, do you want to talk at all about what we know about sewage? Are you interested in how we would do sewage treatment on site?
We have an existing camp at the site right now. We have a water treatment facility there. We are planning a water treatment facility associated with our future operations. And you know, the similar technology, it's a membrane bioreactor. If you want to know what kind of treatment system it is, that's what we plan to have. It's a membrane bioreactor. It's a biological treatment plant.
It actually generates a Class A reuse water that we reutilize for flushing toilets back into the system to reduce our consumption of water. And it starts to do more than cycle? Not right now. Where does it start? And it goes, the bulk of it gets reused. The rest of it right now goes into a drain field. During operations, it will have a discharge into the field. It will need to meet discharge standards.
Yeah, so to clarify, it does have to be the standards set out by both the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality and any other federal regulations that regulate it.
Okay, so I just realized that we did have questions submitted from folks when they walked in the door about health and safety. Environment. Actually, several of these are related to the environments, and we have a separate meeting just on environmental impacts. One of the questions had to do with health and safety at the mine, which I think Kyle already pretty much answered, your practices and philosophy related to safety at the mine. That's environment, and then there is a question about are our first responders and hospitals prepared for new patients or accidents or major problems that happen with exposure to chemicals? So don't know if that's something Sean wants to answer, or if there's anyone from McCall Fire here, or if that's something we should just put on the list to find out more information later. No takers? Okay.
I would take that real quick. We do, as John was called fire, obviously, I'm not a chief officer, but I'm here. We do train diligently with the hospital yearly on mass casualty incidents, hazardous materials incidents. We do have capabilities to handle hazardous material spills. We are your fire department. Our mission statement is to basically provide a caring service that exceeds expectations. We're basically here to do that, to fill that message. And we do work with Sean, we know very well, and we have trained on these kind of mass casualty incidents. So hopefully that answers some of your questions. One thing I will hit on for us as a response agency, as a hazardous materials response agency, we are a defensive entity only, meaning we can help contain a spill with this gentleman and his transport company. If we need to mitigate a spill, as in go in and actually put on the suits to level A and breach it, that would come from Boise, which is Region 4. So the only thing I can say for that is if there is a life safety issue, we risk a lot to save a lot. Environmental issues, you're going to look at a 4-hour response time to actually mitigate any kind of major fuel truck, cyanide, or any other. Hopefully that answers your question.
Great, thank you. Okay, Sean?
I'm happy to answer that. I'm Sean McAllister, and I serve as administrator for St. McCall. I might be a mic, but not quite a voice. I'll be talking while we're waiting. So to that point, I think we've got a very strong partnership with our fire and EMS partners, which I'm grateful for, and we do drill throughout the year and quite consistently. I think we're well prepared in the McCall community to handle a lot of different types of incidents and events. We're also, with St. McCall, we broke ground on site preparation for a new hospital, so that work starting this summer. We'll be building the new hospital over the next 3 to 4 years. It's a large expansion and upgrade, and will really help us meet the needs of this region well into the future. So regardless of whether Midas is a go or not, we're preparing for demographic growth similar to the school district, because it's happening now, and we foresee that it's going to be quite big in the future. I am a little concerned on the clinic side, so our focus is on the acute care hospital now. Our clinic space is pretty limited. We do need to expand the clinics in the future. And frankly, that's the future of healthcare, which is keeping people healthy and well and out of the hospital. So primary care that occurs in the clinics, preventative services, and then care that's closer to our homes or in the home is really the key to the future. So I think along with the school district, I'd like to sit down with Congress and really talk about the demographic projections, because we will need those to do our future plan. But for now, I think we're well prepared.
Great, thank you. All right, so that was all of the questions that we had under health and safety, unless there's any last thoughts, and then we'll move on to economy and jobs and that type of thing. There's one person here, and then this gentleman in the top right there.
Kyle, is on. Do you guys help fund McCall Fire with equipment, training, vehicles, response? It's pretty costly to train people and to keep their training at the level that they need to be.
Not at this point in time.
I'd suggest maybe that would be a good idea. I spent a career in fire, and I was actually in charge of Region 4 hazmat team for the state of Idaho, and responded several times up here on hazmat skills. It's expensive and it's significant. Do you have agreements with the state right now in place with the response team?
No.
Which would be the Boise Fire response team?
Not at this point in time, there are no.
All right, so we have a gentleman here with a question. Thank you.
The 1872 Mining Act stipulates the best and highest use for federal land, public land, is mining. It also stipulates there's no royalties be given to the public on the mining from that land. The question I would have, is there any royalties to be given to the county or the state? It seems to me that this is an extraordinarily great deal for the mining company, but I'm not at all convinced this is such a good deal for our community. So I'd like to know what legal obligations you have to live up and help us improve this infrastructure. Recognize that we add 3,500 people to Valley County. That's increasing the population by almost a third or more. That's an extraordinary drain on our resources.
So I don't know if there's anybody here that can answer the tax question. Oh, can you? Okay. And it sounds like a good segue into the economy.
Rather than speaking in hypotheticals, I would point to Caribou County, where the phosphate patch, where there's been active mining for a couple of decades now. Agrium's project, or Agrium now Edithos's project down there, is very similar in scope of employment, so about 500 workers with average wages and benefits of about $50 million a year, which is right on par with what we project. Every year, they purchase about $100 million in local goods and services, and then they provide $5 million to local and state taxes, and over $4 million in royalties and fees a year.
To who? To the state?
To the state, and then some of those are county property taxes, employment tax, etc.
Okay, so, I don't know, this one's really quick. We had one question that was submitted prior to the start of the meeting related to the economy, and that person asked, what will happen to the Stibnite mine and to the local communities if the project does not move forward? So I'm not sure if they mean they just decide not to do it altogether or if it stops partway through, but I don't know if there's anyone that wants to shed light on that.
I guess what I'd say is that some of the benefits to your comments earlier, that the area is growing. You have a strong tourism industry here, which I think is a nice benefit, and something that you should also continue to kind of grow and develop over time. We see also a lot here with some other, I think with other communities we see, I see manufacturing expanding up here. We work with a couple of the manufacturers. I see a couple of breweries, for example, which I was, I always get really excited to see them cropping up, especially because a lot of them don't just service the local area that they ship out. So again, you're kind of like along those economic indicators, you're bringing dollars into the community because the tax dollars are coming from outside the community to inside. So that's some things you want to see, and that's really beneficial. I think that what I would say is that you want to continue and have good planning, and you want to continue growing those aspects of your community to diversify it, and then add on a project like this, which is a great opportunity, to your existing economic environment. This is like this could be a huge boon. It could provide a lot of infrastructure to your area. We can kind of spur maybe some affordable housing discussions, which you certainly had in the community. Those things are all really, I think, beneficial. But I said, just be smart about your planning and continue to develop the existing infrastructure and this existing economic system that you have, and then add on to this to create it more diverse. You don't want to be overly reliant on tourism as well as a community. Because what happens when you go through a recession? All of a sudden, if you go through a recession and then people stop visiting McCall, what's that going to do to your economy? That's why, from an economic development standpoint, the best economies are always built on a couple different factors, and they have a couple different components in it to make them more whole and balanced.
Okay, thank you. I see a hand up there, and we also had a couple of questions related to the economy that came in online before the meeting. I will save those for later. after we do these two. So we have a gentleman in the back.
I can talk loud. One thing
Okay,
with
talk loud.
recession is they come back. When a mine closes, it's gone forever. So that is one thing that I totally agree with diversifying an economy. I think there's a lot of small business owners here. And I think there's no shortage of employment opportunities in this town. The hardest thing about being an employer right now is finding employees. One of the keys to that is affordable housing and all these other things. A huge concern is there's going to be a lot more stress on housing availability. Costs of housing are going to go up. We are going to be competing with people that pay a lot more. A lot of us aren't paying $85,000 a year, which I wish we were. But I think there's a lot of economic impacts that we're not talking about to other small businesses that have nothing to do with this industry. So it's just something to think about.
All right, so we have another question right here. That was a good segue into mine. My major concern is the recreation industry in the backcountry. I lived 6 months back there. I've been in that industry for 30 years. I also live out here in McCall, in the middle. So that's why I'm at the meeting. And I haven't said a lot because I recognize that this is a McCall-centered question, period. But there are two very important recreation businesses in the Johnson Creek, East Fork, South Fork, Stibnite, east of McCall, that are suffering badly just with the prospect of having Midas Gold permitted there. One of the businesses can't be sold. The other business is looking at heavy truck traffic on all of the prime fishing waters in the backcountry. And there needs to be some way of balancing the historic recreation opportunities in Valley County with the Midas Gold proposals. And I'd like to ask Midas if they have any plans to try to mitigate the impacts on that area.
Sure. Thank you, Diana, for your question. So we take recreation very seriously. We also take access to recreation and the outdoors very seriously. I grew up in those woods. I want my kids to still have access to those woods. Even just looking at our transportation plan alone, from community feedback, recognizing that there would be an impact to recreationalists who currently use the Southeast or the South Fork Road and Johnson Creek Road, we determined that we would instead invest in upgrading and building the Burnt Log Road to keep traffic away from areas where people currently recreate, and to make sure that we are minimizing any potential access to those fisheries. Also working with the snowmobile community, with the community out of Yellow Pine to ensure that there is access. Also very, very important to us. And that's another function that this Community Advisory Council can help provide in more real time. We understand that as Idahoans, if there's one thing that unites us, it's getting outside. And we don't want to stop anybody from getting outside. We want to encourage people to get outside. And in fact, I think getting more people up in that area can help do that. I don't know if anybody from the operations side has a more detailed question on what that looks like in the future, but we're absolutely committed to it.
Okay. Do you mind coming up just a little bit closer? And then I'm going to read the two questions that we got from the online submittals, and then we'll move on to the last topic, which is the community benefit agreement.
This is in direct relation to your comment. Do you think that the access to the Meadow Creek Road area would just interfere with people recreating in general? This is the road you're proposing to build. It goes to, yeah, for longer. Do you think that that would interfere with people who are already recreating in that area?
So will the construction of the Burnt Log Road interfere with recreation that's already happening in that area? That's the question? Okay.
Thank you. Tyler, John, or Dale, do we have numbers currently on traffic on Burnt Log Road? It's my understanding that it is closed.
No.
Or it's a two-track right now?
Well, no, it's an old main stem logging road, so it is used. It's used more heavily during the hunting season, and for people that go back up in there during the early snows and skid in and do backcountry skiing and things along that nature. Increased traffic in a better road, I don't see. I mean, you'll have more traffic, so that will be an impact, but you're going to have better access into that area for more folks to be able to enjoy our backcountry area.
Thank you. Okay, so one of the questions related to the economy that we got submitted online is asking, it's a long question, so I'm just going to paraphrase it. Will Midas Gold hire local employees for their jobs, and if those positions are technical positions that locals wouldn't normally qualify for, would Midas Gold provide training opportunities to help the local community be able to take those jobs before you bring in outside folks?
Answer to that is yes. So far since 2009, we have prioritized hiring local, and that commitment will remain. We recognize that the immediate workforce may not be here, and that training will be required in order for us to commit to hiring Idaho first. So we are currently having conversations with the Department of Labor, with the community college systems, with Commerce, and even with the National Guard on where are there synergies with the Department of Education as well. Where are there synergies that we can build on to help train people for fields that are dynamic, that don't just mean that your job ends when your job at the mine ends. And I think currently already, I'll highlight Haley for a moment. Haley on our staff is a trained certified geologist and a teacher. Right now our team spends about 60 hours a month in classrooms in this community, talking to kids about STEM education, about the importance of science, and about the types of jobs that are available to them in those careers, something that we take very, very seriously.
Thank you. Okay, so before we move on to the community benefit agreement that Midas has proposed, is there any last question related to economy? No? Okay. So we did get quite a few questions submitted in advance here in the envelope, so give me a moment. And for those of you who may not be aware, Midas Gold and a group of local citizens have drafted a potential community agreement that they have presented to McCall, Donnelly, Cascade, Yellow Pine Council, Riggins, so I get all the cities, and then Idaho County, Valley County, and Adams County. And so all of those groups are currently considering whether to participate in an agreement with Midas Gold that contains 3 elements. One is the formation of a Stibnite Foundation, which is a charitable foundation, and the parties to the agreement would make up the board of that foundation, which Midas Gold would finance, and then that board would make grants into the community. The second element of the agreement is that there's an advisory council to Midas Gold, similar to what Mr. Blanchard described earlier about having a communication line with the company. And then the third element of the agreement is that the folks who sign it agree to submit comments to the Forest Service during the NEPA process, which is the permitting process that we're in right now. So those are the 3 elements of the agreement, and the McCall City Council has not made a decision yet about whether to enter into the agreement, so very interested in hearing what people have to say tonight related to that topic. So let's see what questions we got. Okay, this is an interesting one, so I'm going to save it for a second. Okay, what is the purpose of the community agreement and why would any of the communities sign it? So I described what the three elements are, but I don't know if anybody wants to elaborate on why we have to sign an agreement to participate in a process with the company. So, oh, Anne's here.
Hello, everyone. So the purpose of the agreement is really to have open lines of communication. A lot of the issues that have come up this evening and questions that have come up this evening, this is a forum to get those things answered and to have very direct communication with the company and with each other too about what is going on in the community, particularly as it relates to our project over the next couple of decades as we go through permitting and construction and operations and then finally monitoring at the end of it. So that is the purpose, the main purpose of it. And then part of that is the foundation where, we talked a lot about economics. The foundation, which we would fund, it's a little bit like profit sharing. So we put money in today when we're not making any profits. And then when we do start to make profits when we're in operation, there's a formula to tie the profitability of the mine to the foundation contributions. And that's really just some sharing and being good neighbors. So those are the two purposes of those elements of the agreement.
Okay, thank you. You might hang on to some microphones
Yeah,
since you have the most knowledge of the agreement. So, so one of the questions that was submitted is asking whether this agreement is adequate to offset long-term costs of the impacts associated with socioeconomic, environmental, transportation, those things we talked about earlier. So I suppose clarification about what the foundation funds would be for.
Certainly. So the funds of the foundation, I mean, you could use them for things that are peripherally an impact of the project, but the company itself, as we move forward, will fund any of the mitigation that we have to do on environment, on infrastructure. So that's just part of the permitting. We would do that anyway. This is over and above that.
Okay.
So it's for whatever the community wants. There'd be applications made to the foundation, and it could be anything from new worm composting bins, has that word in it, and or something to do with education or really anything.
Okay, and then this one isn't super direct to the community benefit agreement, but it is a part of our community, and we haven't even touched on it yet tonight, and it was in this packet, so I'll go ahead and ask it anyway. But what role is the tribe playing in the planning phase of the project? So I don't know if anybody from the tribe is here tonight would want to answer that.
Hello, my name is Nikhil Williamson. I'm the director for the Nez Perce Tribe Culture Resource Program. I guess I could probably kind of touch specifically on my program's role. I think it was around the spring of 2017. We've entered, and I guess I should preface what I'm going to say with, we worked with Anne and with Midas Gold. I think we found them to be, like it's been said by others, very proactive in terms of engaging the tribe fairly early. So we basically proposed to do a kind of a traditional use study, cultural analysis of the potential project area associated areas, and we just finished up our draft just recently. And so basically, they've been engaging on a policy level with our Nez Perce Tribal Executive Committee, as well as on a technical level through our evaluation, which kind of roughly follows the Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. So we've kind of concluded that. And I think, I guess roughly to summarize a lot of our broader issues, and again, our issues are technical issues that kind of inform some of the broader decisions that are made above myself on a policy level with our Tribal Executive Committee. So, roughly, I guess, a lot of our concerns kind of revolved around the treaty reserve hunting and fishing and gathering rights that we have within this area. A lot of you may or may not be aware, but this is within the Indian Claims Commission exclusive use area of the Nez Perce tribe. This is Aboriginal territory for the Nez Perce people. This lake we call Daksalit, Coos, meaning split water. We have all these uses that go along with this area. My family fishes just in the Bergdorf area, Seasash River, so these are continuing places that are important to the Nez tribe. So there's some larger concerns that go beyond the cultural resource standpoint that I kind of focus in. I see Emmett back there, as well as some of our people from the fisheries program that have some other issues that they look at from their particular perspective. Our tribe puts a lot of effort into environmental improvement, watershed improvement to help the fisheries, which are more than just recreation to us. These sorts of things are life. They're the way we take care of them is how we take care of our life. So they have a different, it goes above and beyond just mere recreation and those sorts, not to minimize those sorts of issues, but they have a deeper meaning, they have a cultural, spiritual meaning to us that we have to have a resource in place to maintain these long-term connections. Also, I believe just kind of a recent development. I think there's some literature and press release as far as our tribal executive committee's approach to this particular project. I think on the back table, I believe. So there's a resolution and attached press release in terms of what the policy has in terms of their support of this particular project. So I don't know if Emmett wants to chime in, or somebody else, or Wes, I don't know if he's still here, or some of the individuals that are going to speak more specifically to the watershed or fishery concerns. But from strictly a cultural resource perspective, that's how we've been involved up to this point.
So the other questions that were in the envelope are very much more specific to permitting questions and environmental questions, which, as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we have 2 other lecture sessions in this room for those specific topics. So I'm not going to ask those now, but I'll save them for those nights. Again, October 23rd, 6 p.m. here is the permitting agencies and permit process topic. And then November 13th at 6 o'clock here is the discussion around environmental impacts. So if you have any of those questions, I encourage you to come back or submit things like that online. So are there any questions from the audience about the community benefit agreement?
So I read the community benefit agreement, and one of the things I noticed was my school was expecting a signature, or expecting us to sign off, the community to sign off by March 15th, or somewhere around then, about 2 months prior to the release of the EIS. And I'm wondering why. They can't wait until the EIS comes out so we can get a more accurate picture of what this project is going to look like and what the impacts will be before negotiating any sort of agreement. Why is there such a rush to get the communities to sign on to this agreement? And I think
So there isn't really a rush. The date you refer to in the agreement is a date that we put in to have the rules of the advisory committee set up. So we didn't want to be too specific in this agreement. It's quite broad reaching, and what we wanted to do was have the advisory group get together and make their own rules, and that would be things like voting, how are you going to replace people if somebody has to leave the committee, that sort of thing. So that's the date you're referring to. That's by the end of March. We have been working on this for more than a year now, and I would say we've been having conversations in the various communities for several years around this concept of the foundation and the advisory group. So it's not really tied to the EIS process, although the letter that we've asked for from communities, from the elected officials of the communities, is tied to that process. So we have to do it before.
I would just maybe clarify that the community agreement is not about the project itself, and so being able to sit down around the table ahead of time allows for us to work with those cities before there is a draft EIS.
Sorry, I don't hear that.
So we have some questions back here. I'm sorry, which? No.
Okay. This is a question for our speaker from earlier tonight, Tom. So your recommendation to the community that we do enter into a community agreement, read the current form of the community agreement, and do you recommend that we sign on to the one that's currently being proposed, or that we negotiate one that addresses more directly the things that our community is concerned about?
And can you pass in the microphone, please? Thank you.
The idea that you could negotiate new terms or conditions is certainly one that I think both parties should look for if it could be improved upon, and I would encourage you to raise those issues, but in the long run, there is a record of decision coming within a relatively short period of time, a year to a year and a half from now, something like that. And when that occurs, and I'm pretty convinced, knowing the mining law and how Forest Service works, is that they're going to come out approving this with conditions, mitigation. But once that happens, things are going to roll really fast. And I think this agreement is an initial step to start establishing communications between the communities and the mining company. It may not be the best worded agreement, and I would hope the mining company would be open to changing and making additions. You can come to a mutual agreement on what's important. But if you don't have those lines of communication open, when this thing starts up, believe me, that mining company is going to be head over heels in development work, and they're going to have less time for developing relationships with the community. When problems come up, you need to have those channels open. This does not obligate you to support the mine. It doesn't obligate you to make positive comments in NEPA. It asks you to make comments, and I would hope that you feel free to be critical in your comments, because that's how that process should work. But if you don't have avenues to talk with them, you're going to have a hard time when push comes to shove and problems start coming up. So I think communications are highly important right now.
Thank you. Okay, I know I saw some hands in this corner before I go back across.
Yeah, my question is just, what's this thing worth? Like, I think, the 250,000 once production starts, the initial 100,000 payments, $1.5 million shares, like, what's the total value of this? Is this $10, $15 million? Is this $50 million? Or is it $2 million?
That's a good question. So the number is variable. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of the production era contributions are tied to profitability. However, there is a minimum payment annually of $500,000. So during the 12 years of production, that's $6 million. We're roughly $1 million from now until that point through permitting and construction, and then another $1 million at the end of it. So, so that's something like $10 million at a minimum.
What's the profit?
Oh, sorry. I would just add in the shares of Midas Gold Corp, which today, so we're looking at two sets of 1.5 million shares of Midas Gold Corp, and that's designed to be around $2 million at today's prices. And depending on how those shares change in value, that would determine what that is. The idea behind the shares themselves is that they form the basis for the endowment fund. And we've probably put in some rules in the foundation itself around carving off a percentage to put into the future, to the endowment for the long term. And that allows the foundation to continue after the end of the project life. So the precise number is not known because we don't know what the numbers are exactly, but there is a minimum that will be around $10 million in cash, something like that, plus the shares of the company and what they're worth today is another $2 million.
The profitability part?
Yes.
It's at 1%. I couldn't quite understand that statement. Can you explain that?
I will. So we're actually working on some expanded language that our CFO is putting together. The idea that we came up with was we wanted it to be something like $1 million a year with some formula that was based on publicly available information, so you didn't argue over expenses or anything like that during that production era. So it would be tied to some financial statements that are issued and some terms that are in the financial statements. So that was the idea, but we wanted to have a minimum, which is the $500,000 that we guaranteed each year. But averaging over the 12 years of production, it would be around, and we can't put that out there, it's formula, but the idea behind that, roughly 1% after tax and, I forget what the other term was, but basically paying back our loans. And then that would be around $1 million averaged over the 12 years, so something like that with a minimum.
Not a question, but a comment. I'd like to piggyback on Tom's suggestion about improving the community agreement. And I haven't read it, but the three pieces that I just heard, I would suggest maybe you separate number 1 from number 2 and 3. So the foundation's over here, the community agreement's over here. And you don't hold the community agreement and the input from the community and the comments that go into the document hostage to the fundraising. It smells like a fish, it looks like a fish, it just smells fishy. And so keep the foundation separate and give that to all communities impacted, whether they join your agreement or not. They're impacted communities. They all deserve to be involved in that end of it. And keep the agreement just for the other portion.
Other questions here?
I just have a quick question. We get a lot of comments and questions at the city about who signed the agreement. There's a lot of discrepancies in the community about who's already signed on and who hasn't. So I just wanted to clarify the yellow pine agreement specifically and separate that from the community agreement and who signed to date.
Can I address his comment actually first?
Yeah.
So separating out the foundation and your comment, which is that all communities should be able to participate in the foundation regardless of whether they sign, that is the case. So if the community signs on to the agreement, what they get is a seat on the foundation board, but it doesn't preclude any community that chooses to not sign from applying to the foundation for funds. And the idea behind it is that we want this to be, a benefit to the whole area. So just what you said. Yes.
Then my suggestion would be not to have only communities who sign on the foundation board, but all impacted communities. Because all impacted communities, you're admitting they're impacted. They deserve some of the funding, and they deserve a seat at the table.
Okay. Yes, she asked for clarification on, I think what Erin was saying is that we get a lot of questions over at the city or comments about, has the city council signed this? Which cities have signed it already? What's the status of that? And so I think that's what she's asking me to update us on that.
So this regional community agreement, no community has signed. What we're trying to do is have people consider it, and then collectively, around the same time, they would agree one after another, potentially with their whatever process they have within their own community to agree or reject, whatever that is. The Yellow Pine agreement was kind of I don't want to call it a mini agreement, but it was basically we were contributing to Yellow Pine for several years, and they wanted some funding for some things, so we just put together a small version of a previous draft of the agreement and signed off on that in July 14th, I want to say, or 13th, something like that, to provide them with some small funding over the next few years, which they wanted to use for their water system. So there was some impetus to get that done quickly so that we would provide that funding for their water system. And that was the timing on that. They are very interested in signing on to the larger regional agreement. And the thing that we've heard from the folks in Yellow Pine is they like the idea, the main thing has been the idea of having a seat at the table and a voice in the project, and also with all the other communities in the area, because they just like that aspect of it.
So I'm going to take one more question because we've gone over our time, and just another reminder that if you still have questions, please feel free to jot them down on the paper that's posted on the window in the back corner over here. And please join us again October 23rd and November 13th for more dialogue. And I'm going to get one more question into the back here. And then, and after I do that, or before I do that, I just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and for the representatives from the state agencies and from Midas School who are here to help answer questions as best as we can get the information today. And yeah, I think it was a
very good conversation. I really appreciate it. So let's get our last question and then we're going to break up.
So these community agreements are between Midas Gold and the communities that sign. What happens in the case, let's say Midas gets bought out by Bear Gold? When you have that, and folks who have been maybe associated with these agreements, I'd like an answer maybe from Midas, but also folks who've been participating in other agreements. What's the legality of you've made an agreement with a company that no longer owns this, and how valid are they? And so I'd like to hear from Midas and maybe anyone else in the community that's ever participated in one of those.
So I'll answer that next. So there's language in the agreement that basically binds not only Midas Gold in its current iteration, but if we combine or purchase by another company, any successors or assigns of the company are bound by this. And we've also put very specific language in the agreement because we've heard this concern. What happens if you get 3 years down the road and suddenly you're bought out and no more contributions to the foundation or something like that. So we've put very specific language in there where we are committed to do this. There is nothing that will prevent us from doing this, provided we're in operation. So that's that. And any successor to the company, any entity that combines with the company, any entity that purchases Midas Gold. Not that that's our goal, certainly is not. But if that does happen, there's language in this agreement that provides for that.
Okay, again, thank you. I'm now going to wrap it up to be respectful of everybody's time. Really appreciate everybody being here. Please, you can jot down notes. You can also email us on the city's website any questions, concerns, thoughts.
And I did just really quickly, as you mentioned earlier.
Yes,
so this Friday at our offices in Donnelly from 11 to 3, we're holding just office hours. We're also doing that on November 9th. We will come to you, come to us. We are.
If you can stack a chair, please stack a chair for me. I'd love to go home to my 3 kids. So open up the back door there and stack a chair for us. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
And look, I love it. If you're interested in any additional document, one of the things that we some consideration for different places. I appreciate your historical background Well, I know, but it's clearly to as a sort of resource, and I want to continue that. It's clear that you're not a fan